Hi everyone, this is Andrew Prima, Ukrainian American, living and reporting from Ukraine. I'm the founder of Ukraine Business News, UBN.news, reporting from the front lines of the Ukrainian war with Russia. In today's podcast, 15th week of war in Ukraine, I would like to cover following topics: updates from the front lines, battle for Severodonetsk in Luhansk region, and Belarusian participation in the war against Ukraine. In general, Ukraine has a great chance to win in Donbass. With 155 millimeters of artillery and ammunition now being supplied, it is clear that our capabilities for resistance have increased significantly. We got stronger. We have a large number of people in the combat units. It must be understood that the enemy has now launched an artillery offensive, has changed its tactics significantly. We need, under the tactic, of course, to change and get ahead of the enemy. We need to move forward. We have the resources and the human capabilities. It must be understood that Russia's advancements has never seemed inevitable. Russia's advantage is due to the fact that the enemy acts purposefully, concentrates all resources, has a great advantage in technology, ammunition, has a certain organization of management. It is difficult to counterattack this, but it is possible at the expense of more flexible tactics, greater combat experience, our artillery, and ammunition. We will not be able to gain a technical advantage over Russia in numbers for a long time. It is unlikely that this will happen in the near future. But even those forces that we have and resources are already enough to defeat the enemy, to inflict very serious losses on them. Putin had set a deadline of June 10th to take over a city, Severodonetsk. The severe battles have been going on there for the last 10-12 days. Well, not so quick. The June 10th already passed by. Our opponent has chosen the strategy of total war. And in this total war, the enemy understands that he is fighting against the people of Ukraine. That is, they need to destroy those objects that allow the people to continue living in the area. They understand that Ukrainians are united, they support the army, and in order for the army to lose, the conditions for the existence of the Ukrainian people must be destroyed. Therefore, of course, there is a deliberate destruction of infrastructure in various cities. The situation at the front is changing very quickly. In Zaporizhia direction, the enemy was gathering groups of troops, and we thought that from there the enemy would resume offensive operations in the direction of Zaporizhia city or in the direction of the Kramatorsk. But already 4 days ago it became known that they urgently withdrawn troops from the Zaporizhia direction. And as I understood, that this is connected with the fighting around Severodonetsk city. They want to strengthen the Severodonetsk direction at the expense of other directions in order to try to take the city by June 10th. After all, another political deadline has been set for Russian troops on June 10th. Therefore, today we can say that the threat in Zaporizhia direction has decreased slightly. The head of Luhansk Regional Military Administration has said that Russian troops plan to capture Severodonetsk city and cut the Lysychansk-Bakhmut road by June 10th. And as you know, this road is a road of life for Ukrainian army forces because that's the only road through which Ukrainians are supplied all the ammunition food, and everything they need to fight the enemy. Such a threat does exist, but for now, I would estimate its probability is 50 to 50, because in principle, we keep the track. By the way, we don't use it because it's very densely fired by Russian artillery. But in any case, we keep it. And the Russian troops advancing on the road from Papasna's side have been stopped, and today they are securely held by Ukrainian troops. Now, no one can say exactly where the front line passes. As for the city of Severodonetsk itself, the situation there is very difficult. Now, no one can say exactly where the line is. There are ongoing street fights, non-stop 24 hours a day. Some areas and some streets are passing from hand to hand, but we still hold at least almost half, almost half, but a little bit less than half of the city. Still, the enemy claims that they hold in probably 80% of the city. The Ukrainian forces claiming probably 60-65%. Besides, what else I can say? That for sure, where those troops withdrawn from Zaporizhia directions, they are moving. Maybe they are going south. By the way, all the garrisons are inside the occupied territories were removed from Melitopol city. They were all dug up and they will either appear in Severodonetsk direction or elsewhere. Russians understand in order to break through Ukrainian lines, they need more troops, and they have no choice but withdraw some troops from other directions. I think Severodonetsk is a very important city for them. Although Kherson is also a threatening direction for Russia because Ukrainian troops have had some success in the last 7-8 days. But let's see where these troops will appear, which they will send from the Zaporizhia direction, whether in Kherson or maybe to Severodonetsk. However, I'm more inclined to have them appear in Severodonetsk. Russians have a large amount of ammunition, approximately way more than Ukrainians, and if we look at the ratio, some say 1 to 5, some say 1 to 8. Also, Russians have aircrafts providing support, but our soldiers are now in the industrial zone of Severodonetsk, holding up the territory. So, Russian troops still suffering heavy losses, but their goal to take the city over doesn't stop them. The goal is set by Vladimir Putin. The goal set by Vladimir Putin is to take the city, whatever it costs. He doesn't care about the Russian soldiers. He needs the city of Severodonetsk. The enemy is trying to surround Ukrainian forces. That's why it's so important to take it over. In the north of Donbas region, the cities of Lysychansk and Severodonetsk. Our military sees the enemy destroying schools, and of course, we all understand that this is done on purpose. They want to cause migration, thus paralyzing the economy and economically destroying Ukraine as a state. That is, to limit our ability to resist. This is conscious strategy of the Russian Federation, and they are destroying more and more civilian objects. There is no reason to hope that Russia will stop in Donbass. Russia will stop only where Russian strike groups will be destroyed. According to the conflict intelligence team, on May 11th, the General Staff of the Russian Federation issued an order to the district to prepare an additional 60-70 reserve battalions. It's going to be up to approximately 40,000 soldiers or 30/40 BTGs which are battalion tactical groups. They should be set up by June 19th. After a month of training, they will be sent to the front lines. But it should be assumed that by the end of the June 20th, they are expected to appear in the front lines. However, in the first place, it is unlikely that so many people will be able to sign a contract with the army, the pace of destruction of which has already begun to frighten even the most deceived Russians. Secondly, the quality of these reserves in terms of personnel and equipment will be roughly speaking a second class. Thirdly, their preparation and transfer to the front is likely to be a wave. That is, no strike groups will come out of it, and it will be used to patch holes in the east and south to compensate for the huge losses. In order to avoid strengthening the Russian group, even with a second class reserve and with it will be drawn artillery, MLRS with full ammunition, which in Russia there is no restrictions. Our armed forces must have maximum influence on the approach of such reserves. Hitting them requires long-range artillery, as I said, MLRS, and volley fire systems, which we expect from our partners. They come in small numbers, but they're not enough to form combat-ready unit and formations. We're waiting for these deliveries to go by sea across the Atlantic, and this can be serious. Then they will they will go hundreds of such systems. However, we should all understand it takes time. Right now, Ukraine received the artillery systems that were promised 2 months ago. So, in order for Ukrainian army to be fully supplied, it will take months, unfortunately. We need missile defense systems as well to secure the supply of these firearms. We see that the Russian troops is starting to fight more and more on logistics routes in western Ukraine. Such military support depends on foreign policy factors. The support from the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Poland, and the Baltic states is warning. They are our friends and they're trying to help us as much as possible. Now, Germany has been delaying the supplies of equipment and at the same time equipping its own Bundeswehr, which has been completely disarmed. Recently, Olaf Scholz announced the provision of military aid for Ukraine. It is also possible to supply mainly from industry, which is associated with long deadlines. We should receive the IRIST air defense system. For other countries, Egypt and Sweden, Germany supplied these systems for several years. This term is clearly not suitable for us. However, Annalena Baerbock called the term several months. We need this weapon so badly, and we need this weapon as soon as possible to sustain the Russian forces and start counteroffensive on the front lines. However, as of today, Germany has not supplied a single piece of military equipment. We would like to receive more drones from our partners as well. We need them in huge quantities, both reconnaissance and strike. This is to increase the accuracy of aiming and fire impact, to preserve manpower, to increase the air defense load of the Moscovite enemy, and consequently to facilitate the actions of our aircraft. Good help came from the coastal defensive line. We were provided with Harpoon and Brimstone anti-ship missiles. This is a guarantee against a landing on our coast. The Black Sea Fleet has already moved 300 kilometers from our shores. They know we have this equipment, and they know after we drown the largest Navy ship Moscow, now they're afraid. They know what Ukrainian army is capable of. Regarding the actions of Russia itself and its allies, movements continue in Belarus. So far, there is no political will to put the Belarusian army into action. The proclaimed Belarusian President Lukashenko continues to look between the drops. Its main goal is to ensure the security of one's own regime and one's own life, and for this he uses any means. So, what does military activity in Belarus as of today? In recent weeks, Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko has announced the creation of the Southern Operational Command of the Belarusian Army, which will be based near the border with Ukraine. The Ukrainian officials note increased intelligence and the deployment of additional units in the border areas. Belarusian president also recently allowed Russia to deploy Iskander-M missiles and other nuclear-capable missile systems in southern part of Belarus. Meanwhile, the General Staff of Ukraine announced in early June that preparations were underway to increase the total number of Belarusian army from 45,000 to 80,000. Russia's second attack on the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, was now seen as increasingly likely. We see this threat as high. Either the Russians will be able to enter if they gather forces and announce mobilization, or they will persuade the Belarusians to take a part in this war. Not everyone is convinced that the threat from Belarus is real. Kiev was the primary priority when Russia first invaded Ukraine on February 24th, when several elite Russian troops were ordered to seize the city and behead the Ukrainian government. However, the forces of Putin's invasion faced unexpected fierce resistance from Ukrainians and soon found themselves in towns and villages north of Kiev. After a month of minimal progress and heavy losses, the Russian military was forced to retreat completely from the northern part of Ukraine. Belarusian polls consistently show that most citizens of Belarus oppose the war and are particularly adamant about the Belarusian military refusal to take part in this war. Some Belarusians have even taken part in active sabotage of Russia's military action, including attempts to obstruct the passage of Russian troops and military equipment through the Belarusian railway network. Others went to Ukraine and joined volunteer battalions fighting Putin's invasion on Ukrainian side. This situation puts Lukashenko in a very difficult position. He knows that direct participation in the invasion of Ukraine will be extremely unpopular with Belarusians and is likely to fear that many soldiers will desert as soon as they cross the Ukrainian border. The world sees that Putin puts pressure on Lukashenko. The defeat in the battle for Kiev was a humiliating blow for Putin, for which he undoubtedly seeks revenge. However, his only ally, Alexander Lukashenko, apparently doesn't want and cannot take part in any new attempts to seize the Ukrainian capital, while it would be unwise to completely rule out a chance for a new offensive on Kiev. I hope you like our podcast. Glory to Ukraine, and glory to Ukrainian defenders from protecting our land. If you'd like to support Ukraine business news, you can go to website www.ubn.news and click the banner to support UBN team. Thank you for listening.